Hello legends, this is going to be a part 2 deep dive into the LangChain code node. Now this is going to be more technical than the first video because I have to teach you how to write the code for this. Now a disclaimer here, I'm not going to be teaching you how to code. The point of n8n is to have a buffer between you and the code so that you can use this visual drag and drop interface. But unfortunately, if we want to use these LangChain nodes, we have to have some system or method to be able to write the code for these nodes that we can use to create, agents, workflows that complete tasks for us. Now, in my own process of learning how to use these, I actually build out 3 separate, this is an agent, this is like an agent / workflow, and this is an actual workflow. I went progressively harder building out these systems one by one. And in that process, I had to create 3 different sets of code. And I used Claude to create the code for me, but I went through a lot of learning. I had to figure out which methods that from LangChain we could use, because LangChain is actually like a specific language of code, or it's like a dialect of code, so to speak. So I had to figure out how to use that dialect, what parts of the dialect were possible to use within n8n, because n8n's got restrictions. And in that process, I actually documented each of my learnings from creating each of these different agents. And I want to be giving you that document in an LLM ready format. So this is an example of the document. The document actually includes all the code for each specific agent. So there's 3 documents for 3 agents. It includes all the code, and then it includes an actual overview of all of my learning. So all the stuff that I stuffed up on, that I got wrong, that I had to reprompt over and over until I got it right. It includes all that learning as instructions for the LLM. So I made this document not to give to you for you to use. I made this document to give to your LLM. So you can give it to your LLM and say, hey, here's a set of guardrails on how to actually prompt these LangChain code nodes. Using these instructions and guardrails and learnings, write me a LangChain code node that can build a team of agents that completes task A, B, and C. And that's going to give you the best opportunity that you can get to actually create your own custom LangChain code nodes. Now, I will say that I'm not actually using any of these code nodes, these LangChain nodes in my workflows. I don't see myself using them at all. I just had a bit of fun and I want to share that fun with you. So yeah, if you're watching this video, don't think you're going to be using these. I am going to give you all those resources, so all the different resources for each agent. I'm going to make this JSON available as well, so you can download it from my Gumroad, plug it into your n8n right now and follow along. I'm also going to give you LLM ready instructions that'll help you set up this LangSmith reporting. So for my first video, LangSmith is just the reporting interface, the backend reporting interface for your AI agents, because since they're built on LangChain, LangChain is the LangChain and LangSmith that kind of go hand in hand. So this reporting is going to give you the ability to look at every single AI call that you make with your agents. It's going to give you a full rundown of what failed, which tools were used, and then the costs, which is what people really wanted to see from that first video that I made. And as a disclaimer for the people from the first video, you can only do this on a self-hosted version of n8n. So I ran my version on DigitalOcean. I used these instructions from n8n directly. So the instructions that I give you, once again, are LLM ready. You can plug it directly into your ChatGPT or your Claude. And it's going to explain to you how to go into your deployment and how to set up, firstly, the reporting for LangSmith, and also how to set up LangChain and actually use the LangChain code nodes. Now, coming back to the n8n canvas, the thing in the first video that I spoke about that was really interesting to me was we have a bunch of pre-built LLM steps in n8n. So those steps are in this AI folder on the right-hand side here. So we got basic LLM chain, information extractor, sentiment analysis, summarizer. All this stuff here that you see is under the hood, it's actually that LangChain node. So we found the LangChain node over here. And when we bring it onto the canvas, you can see it's like a sad little node. There's no inputs and there's no outputs. But we can configure this to build out any of the LLM steps that we want. I spoke about setting different inputs. So you can actually set your main input that includes the text or the file that you want to input into your actual workflow or your agent. It then includes the ability to add memory, different language models, different tools, so that you can go ahead and build out these custom LLM steps. Now, the main difference between this LangChain node and then these pre-built nodes is that these pre-built nodes don't have a space to actually write any code. And that's because n8n wrote that code in the backend for you, and then they hard-coded it and they hid it away so that you actually cannot edit these nodes. And that's beautiful because we're technical as n8n users, but some of us don't know how to code. So we really just need something super visual, very, very basic, kind of a lot of guardrails put up in order for us to complete certain tasks. So n8n identified the most common LLM steps, AI agents, generate answers to questions, classify text, basic, ask AI some random question, and it pre-packaged these LangChain nodes, wrote the code in the back end, blocked it away, and now you have this highly specialized LLM step. And that's what I actually started off by trying to reproduce over here. So this should look very familiar to you. This is an AI agent step recreated using a LangChain code node. Now we have here a chat input. We've got one AI brain. We have a memory component. We've got a tool. And then for the output, I've just got this regular output, like, set fields block. But inside this code node, you actually have to get all those different inputs and stitch them together. And that's what we're doing over here. So we've got these 4 sections, which are just pulling in and defining for example, the user input that we're using for this execution. It's defining the LLM. So we've got Anthropic for this execution. It's defining the memory and it's defining the tool. Now you can see that we've got this little 0 over here. So the way that this system works is that we first have to ask the language node and say, hey, what are all the things that are plugged into you? So over here, I've just got one LLM that's plugged into this language node, one memory and one tool. Just to skip forward quickly, I actually challenged myself and I said, all right, I want to have 2 LLMs plugged into here. So we can see over here, 2 different LLMs plugged in. Now, what we're doing in that code is we're saying, hey, language node, like a little, language input, return me all the LLMs that are plugged into you. Hey, memory node, return me all the memory that's plugged into you. Hey, tool node, return me all the tools that are plugged into you. So we're getting that using these functions over here, and then we're just selecting the one we want to use. In our case, out of the array, so out of the possible options for the memory that we get back, since we only have one, we're defining that as 0. So in code, you typically define the 0 object as the first object. So then if we had 2 different models plugged in, we would define 0 as the first model, which we know is Anthropic. And then I would put a 1 over here if I had, let's say, OpenAI. And that would distinguish the second LLM input. Now, I know I'm getting a little bit technical here, but guys, this is what you tuned in for. It's a technical video. But anyway, that's what's happening over here. So you actually have to go to each of those sections and say, what have you got plugged in? And then you have to just establish and say, okay, this is the LLM we're using, this is the memory we're using, and this is the tool that we're using. So you have to define all that stuff in the code, which is pretty standard if you're writing code for applications, you're building tools and whatever, you actually have to define all this stuff anyway, so it's not new. But if you don't know how to code, I just want to explain to you that that's exactly what we're doing here. Now I'm going to run through the rest of this code at a very high level because I actually don't think it's important that you know exactly all the little bits and pieces. You can get all those documents that I give you, plug them into your ChatGPT and say, teach me everything, teach me how this stuff works, make me an expert at this LangChain node. That's not me. I'm not going to be able to do that for you, especially in this video. So yeah, you can go ahead and do that learning yourself as well. So over here, we just have a prompt that we're using. So your helpful AI assistant. And this prompt that we have here is the exact same as this prompt that we would have in this AI agent. So this section here, system message, your helpful assistant, whatever we type into here, this is that prompt that we have in the code. Now going back to our LangChain code agent. So let's open this up. So we have that prompt. We have to use, okay, so runnable sequence. Since we're using LangChain, there's a bunch of different like tools that we can use that are native to LangChain. It's like you have a kitchen and you want to cook something and you have different, like a blender to blend things. You have a toaster to toast the bread. You have an oven, you have a fridge. So we're basically able to use these pre-built tools like an oven if we need to bake something. And we just need to call it into this code and say, hey, we need to use this oven to bake this prompt to get this specific output. So yeah, a very silly analogy in comparison there, but I think that should be enough to explain what we're doing. And then yeah, we're basically calling on all the different elements that we had before. Like we know this tool is for web search. We know that we have the LLM, which is what we're using for actual processing, like generating a response. And then as we go through, we actually have the rest of the code that is interacting with the LangChain agent. So it is a little bit complicated, but just so you know at a high level, that's just reproducing, basically saying, use Anthropic to generate a response, add our actual memory to Postgres chat memory, So if you want to use Supabase as your memory, this actually plugs in, the code in here plugs in and actually generates your actual output on the back end in Supabase, which is this stuff over here. So basically every time I have an interaction with this custom LangChain agent, it's going to be documented in my n8n chat history. So I made another video about how to hook up Supabase for your standard agents. I'll link that in the description of this video. But after you watch that, set up your agents using Supabase, then you can just use Supabase for your LangChain agents as well. Now, this is not so interesting, right? I mean, actually, it is a little bit interesting in the fact that we created an AI agent using LangChain code node. But what I wanted to do now is actually create a bit more of a complicated workflow. And I wanted to see if there was any value in actually making things a little bit more sophisticated. So before we dive into this, let me actually just run this agent. So this is a multi-step research agent, building on the standard chat agent that we had just before. In this chat agent, we create an entire workflow to do research for us. So I'm going to open up chat and I'm just going to say research AI advancements in the medical field. And what we're going to be getting here is this agent has a workflow, which we'll dive into just a second, that's basically taking our query, it's tearing it up and creating a bunch of different search queries that it will then run through this web search API. It'll get all those results back and then create a report for us. Now, I wanted to try something different here, and that's why I've got two different outputs. The first output is just the human readable output that we're going to be putting directly back into this chat interface as like a front end output. But then I also wanted to have a separate route that we can get the that research, create a file out of that research, and then take that and then deliver it to the customer in an email or something like that. So it was actually pretty cool to use this feature of having multiple outputs, just because you can create multiple workflows that will simultaneously run. And I don't know, I found it interesting and fun. Okay, so our research is complete. That entire research process took 2.5 minutes. Now, if I just pop this up, let's take a look at what was happening behind the scenes. I'm going to dive into the code as well to break it down for you. So this is a really cool process. Let's actually go through what happened in the agent. So the first LLM call, it basically says, hey, here, this is the prompt for the AI. You're a research planning expert. Take the query that we just received, which is research AI advancements in the medical field, and then give us 3 to 5 specific research queries. We're using JSON as the structure of how to get that response back. So each of the queries, this is basically an array of queries. So just like a list of 5 queries, and then list us which sections we want for the report as well. So this is really cool because the very first agent, the very first step here is to basically build the structure of the report. And then after that, we're going off to these separate web search API calls, and we're getting the information for each of those separate sections of the report. So on the right-hand side, we've got the output of what we did, research topic, AI advancements in medical field research, and all those queries that we had. So there would be 5 queries here, as well as the 5 report sections. So just going through at a high level, then you have each of these LLM calls associated to a tool call, because this first one is searching, research this topic, artificial intelligence, machine learning, medical diagnosis. So I'm not going to go through absolutely each step, but you can see each LLM call is associated with an actual tool call. And then at the very end, we've got a bunch of anthropic LLM calls, which are then taking each of those sections, synthesizing them, and then returning them to the user. For some reason over here, I think because I've got so many agents and my fields, I kind of keep messing them up. The response didn't show properly, but this is the response that we have. So research is complete. This report examines blah, blah, blah. Here's the key learnings. Here's the key sections. It's a snippet of what the report contains. So we actually couldn't see that. Sorry about that, guys. But then we have a downloadable report in this convert to file. So the first output here is just the human readable text. The second output is I think it's actually in JSON. If I look on the left-hand side here, what's the schema? Yeah, okay, so it's actually a JSON object that includes the file name. It includes the actual text within the report, which is just a markdown text that includes all those sections and all the report, like the AI research that we did. And then the output, if I just download this, it's just this thing over here. Let's open it up. There we go. This is the output here. So research report, AI advancements in the medical research field, generated on this day. This is the original query we had, and 5 searches conducted. And then this is a full markdown that you can then take and put into a Google Doc, and the markdown should be converted into actual headings and subheadings and everything else. But this is a thorough analysis of that very simple statement or that very simple search query that we put in. So going through here, we've got all the key sections, conclusions and recommendations, research methodology. This report was generated through an automated research using the following search queries, and it was generated using AI. So that's actually really, really cool. I've seen other workflows in n8n, which are actual 10, 15 nodes on a canvas that will create this kind of research workflow, research agent. But we've just done that entire process using code. Now, to dive into this code, the start of this is the exact same as that first agent that we created. The only difference is here that this first section here is just taking each of those separate inputs. We've removed the comments from them, and that's why it just looks like it's different. It's the exact same. We're still going to the LLM and asking, hey, what LLMs can we use? What memory can we use? What tools can we use? And just to go to the agent, we're basically sending a query out to this little node and saying, what's plugged, what have you got plugged into you? Hey, memory, what have you got plugged into you? And same thing with tools. So we're just searching for what's available for us to use. And then over here, we're defining what kitchen appliances we want to use. Hey, use the microwave, use the fridge, and use the oven. A cool thing that I've done over here is, for my own sanity, I actually wanted to see the progress of this research. So if I open up my console on the right-hand side, I've actually got each of the stages of research documented in my console. So this is good for development, not for production. Like, I actually probably wouldn't put this in production. But these console statements are just ways that we can kind of trace the status of the code, like which stage we're up to. If we mess up somewhere and it kind of breaks, we can see, we messed up at, this 40% section, and we can go back into the AI like ChatGPT and say, hey, we messed up here. Let's fix this issue. So this is a good way to like debug the code. But yeah, the cool thing is we can see each of the statuses, 10% in, 20% in, 30, 35. So as we're making each of those search queries, as we're making the calls to the web search API, and then as we create the actual report at the end, that's what we have here, 90% complete, 95%, and then research complete, 100%, report generated. So as you go through here, you'll actually notice that there's a bunch of different prompts that we're using for different stages. And yeah, the main idea is that we kind of localized an entire n8n research workflow into one LangChain code node. So yeah, I don't really think I'd build out nodes like this. I prefer it still to be visual, but this is just to explore what's possible. All right, so moving on to the next agent. So now this final agent is probably my most favorite agent. Let me just take this and kind of move this stuff to the side. And what I've done over here is very exciting. So same thing, we're using two different outputs, one to create a report that we'll just download and send to the user. One is the actual response that we're sending back into the chat. And then I've got two different LLMs that I'm using for different stages of what's happening in here. And what is happening in here is that we've built out an orchestrator workflow. So I've gone across to the Building Effective Agents, which is the blog post by Anthropic about how to build effective agents. Now, as you go through, you can see different workflows that Anthropic recommends for different tasks. The workflow that we recreated is this workflow here, orchestrator agent or orchestrator workers. So what we're doing in that final LangChain code node is that we have some input, and that input's going to contain the text of that report that we just generated, and then it's going to go across to an orchestrator agent. The orchestrator agent's going to quickly skim the report, like that text file that we're uploading, and just get a basic understanding of what's inside it. Then it's going to go across to 3 different LLM calls, which have different purposes. One is, I think, a summarizer, one is an analyzer, and one is a categorizer, something like that. But three distinct tasks that are going to run in parallel, so at the very same time. And then we have a synthesizer agent at the very end to basically take all this stuff and then to take the original file and then create a report for us on the output. So it's going to review the input report. Now, the cool thing is that we have 2 different LLM calls. For the orchestrator LLM call and then the synthesizer, we're using Claude. And then for these LLM steps on the inside, we're just using ChatGPT. So we're using OpenAI. So now that we're back on the canvas, let me just refresh this. And I want to quickly find that file. All right, it was file 3. I'm just going to say review this file. So I'm going to hit run. And now, just like before, this agent's going to run through that entire workflow. All right, wicked. So it's fully executed. Now, yeah, my response is not coming through before. So basically, I copied my second workflow and I duplicated it for this third workflow. So I think the setting that I have set here is incorrect. But once again, we do have a human, the front end message we're sending in the chat interface. Document analysis complete. It was a quick summary of what the file contains and the quick highlights of what the research or what this investigation gave us. But if I just go across to this file over here, click download, and then this is the report that was generated. So this report just takes that file that we just import. It's a text file, but actually this code also accepts PDF. And then it extracts the text, it goes through it, and then here is a pretty sophisticated report generated for us. Now to go through the steps in the code over here, just to show you that orchestrator part. So once again, what we're doing is we're getting the input from the chat, and actually we also have to capture the input for the file that we're taking. That file we're going to capture in just a second, but this is just that text input that we have. We're then getting the LLM components. Now, since we have two LLM components, the OpenAI and Claude, we're referencing them as 0, which is OpenAI, and then 1, which is Claude. So this is just the position of objects returned. So like I mentioned before, we're going to the LLM little connector and saying, hey, what's plugged into you? Cool. Okay, the first thing that's plugged in, this is what we're going to be assigning to it. The second thing that's plugged in, this is what we're assigning to it. So we can actually create, multiple LLMs into the LLM node, multiple memories into the memory node, and then multiple tools into the tool node. So going through here, defining everything, we're defining the extra appliances that we're going to be using. We're logging the status into the console so we can see what's happening at each stage. And then over here, we're actually grabbing the binary data. So this whole function here, from here onwards, I think, including this part over here, is basically checking for what kind of file did we receive, and then it's able to parse that file and extract the text. I wouldn't upload invoices into this. This is just to display a text-based format with no tables, nothing too complicated. But it's mainly to show you what's possible here. So now we're starting the orchestrator workflow where the main prompt is outlining here, summarizer prompt. So the worker one is a summarizer, and here is the prompt for worker one. Now we have worker two, okay, categorize. Categorize a document into the key sections, the tone, the document type, the urgency level, the audience that it's speaking to, the language and tone. And then we have the final one, which is the analyzer, and it has a different set of criteria. Okay, so those first 3 ChatGPT calls on the output that we saw were just the 3 workers. And then finally, we have the synthesizer over here. Now, the synthesizer is what creates the report at the end for us. And we're actually referencing each of those 3 workers in this section over here. So the analysis result is the summary from the summary worker, the category worker, and then the analysis worker. So the 3 ChatGPT calls that we just executed, they plug into this synthesizer agent, which is using which is using Anthropic. And then this creates the report for us. And then the output of the report is then in JSON format, which we convert to Markdown at the very end. This code is pretty complicated. At the end of the day, it's 335 lines, so it is pretty sophisticated. But then it is just one LangChain code node. So like I mentioned at the start of this video, I don't see myself using these these custom code nodes, mainly because if I want to automate tasks or create agents or workflows using code, then I'll just create that in a separate system that's made for code. In n8n, this is made for visual automation, visual agents. So I don't see a need to use these custom code nodes to this depth. But yeah, it's pretty interesting to look at. So I thought I would just explore it. So the final thing I want to go over is how to use these setup instructions. So I set up my n8n with Docker, and these instructions are only for Docker. If you're using a different system, these instructions might still work. You can just plug this entire document into ChatGPT and say, hey, I followed a different set of instructions. Please help me modify this process to suit my needs. But basically, to set up the reporting, you first have to go across to smith.langchain.com and create an account. Now, the account's going to be free to create. You don't actually have to pay to log all the traces, so all the events from your AI agents to appear over here. You don't actually have to pay anything to use this. This is a free interface to use. Then after you've created your account, just go and generate a LangSmith API key. And then you want to plug that API key into the docker-compose.yml file. So the instructions that I followed were these DigitalOcean and Docker Compose instructions. The YML file for me is located in this root over here. So I actually have to cd, so change directory, so tap into the n8n-docker-caddy, and that's what I'm using in this folder structure over here. So I actually have to tap into this folder first, and then you just type in nano space docker compose yml, and then you bring up your YML file. And this file is where you set up all the configuration for your n8n instance. All right, so to do that, we're going to open up the console for our deployment. So we're going to change our directory. We're going to go cd space n8n-docker-caddy caddy, hit enter. Then we're going to copy this command, paste it into here and hit enter. There we go. And now I'm just going to scroll down until I get to my environment variable section. Perfect. Here we go. So this is the environment section. And the main thing I want to paste in is this stuff over here. So LangChain endpoint, you can just literally copy this exactly as it is. It's the same for everyone. LangChain tracing to true. Your LangChain API key, so just replace this with your API key that you generated from LangSmith. And then LangChain project, you can just use this name, and this is the name that's going to show up in your LangSmith as well. The rest of this configuration over here is if you actually want to use the LangChain code node. I'm not going to include those instructions on video, but they are going to be in this document. So then you just copy all this stuff across into your console. And that's what I have over here. So the LangChain endpoint, the tracing, the API key, and the project. And then you can just save this file, but I'm going to exit because I made no changes. And now we have to restart our n8n to put those into effect. So to restart it, you're just going to copy this command, docker compose restart n8n. You're going to paste it into here and you're going to hit enter. And then it'll take about 10 seconds to just restart your n8n instance. And then when you go into n8n and you use this AI agent node, you're going to be able to see this trace from this AI agent pop up here in your LangSmith, which you can then open up and then just look at all the events of that AI call. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you've watched this far, I'd appreciate if you like, subscribe to my channel, drop a comment, and then ask me any other questions you have around these LangChain code nodes. I really don't think that many people will be using it. Once again, I'm not going to be using them anytime soon. But if you do have a use case, share it with the rest of the community in the comment section. I bet people would love to hear about it. All right, thanks for watching and enjoy your LangChain code node agents. See ya.